The reenactments and commentary in this program may contain frank talk of a sexual nature. Viewer discretion is advised.
If this were a boxing match, you might say the accuser limped back to his corner after a final round of blistering questions, and the defense then brought up another M word. Are the charges about molestation or money? I'm James Curtis, and this is a special one-hour edition of our exclusive Michael Jackson trial coverage. In a volatile day of testimony, the defense attorney, Tom Mesereau, continued his relentless cross-examination of the accuser, and he wants to know if the teenager really takes these charges and this case seriously. Here's what the jury heard, according to the courtroom transcripts.
Okay. Now, you indicated that you were upset that there was no press conference in Miami when you and your family traveled to Miami to see Michael Jackson, correct?
I said it wasn't that big of a deal because I was already having fun.
Well, you wanted a press conference in this case, didn't you?
Michael wanted it.
No.
Michael told me he wanted it.
Sir, when you were testifying before the grand jury, you wanted to give a press conference, didn't you?
No. I thought we were going to have a press conference because that's what I was told.
Do you remember telling Mr. Snedden and the grand jury that you wanted to have a press conference?
I might have said that we wanted to have a press conference because Michael wanted to.
Michael wanted to have a press conference when you were in front of the grand jury? Is that what you're saying? You can answer the question.
No.
Remember telling Mr. Snedden, oh man, I was going to have a press conference?
Excuse me, Your Honor. Could we have a page reference on that before counsel reads it?
Sure, it's 449.
That's fine.
Okay, do you remember when you were in front of the Santa Barbara grand jury, Mr. Snedden told you there was an order that you not talk to the media, and your response was, oh man, I was going to have a press conference. Do you remember that?
That was probably a joke.
That was a joke?
Yeah.
So you're in front of the Santa Barbara grand jury talking about this case, and you're telling a joke?
Yes.
Well, as a programming note, there was a Miami press conference allegedly organized by Team Jackson to rebut the Bashir documentary, but it was ultimately canceled. Next, was there a media fox in the proverbial henhouse?
Do you recall you and your brother Star being picked up by a Fox News reporter at your home?
No.
Never happened?
Well, I have a friend that works for Fox News, but...
What's your friend's name?
Barbara.
Barbara Schroeder?
I don't know her last name.
Do you recall being picked up by Barbara Schroeder and taken for a spending spree?
I remember going to the movies with her and her daughter.
Do you remember she and another member of the media treating you and your brother to shopping?
I have a friend that used to work for Fox that I met at the Laugh Factory, but he works in, like, cell phones or something.
Do you recall Barbara Schroeder and another representative of Fox News taking you and Star shopping and paying your bills?
They weren't representing Fox News to us. They were our friends.
Do you remember them taking you shopping and paying your bills? Yes or no?
I don't remember them paying my bills. And I remember going to the movies with them. I don't remember going on shopping sprees.
Where did you go with them?
We went to the movies.
Where?
Galleria.
Which Galleria?
I don't know, somewhere in Hollywood or somewhere.
In Los Angeles, right?
Yes.
Okay, and you're saying they never took you to any store and paid any bill for you?
No.
The idea here, Ricky, is that he's getting money yet again from another source, a media source. Is it really that big of a deal, since we know how television operations work sometimes? If they want a story from somebody, they do nice things for you.
We know how television operations work. I don't think the general public knows, and I don't know that the 12 members on the jury know. But there's one other point here. He is saying, no, they didn't buy me anything. No, they didn't pay me my bills. And it sure sounds like Tom Mesereau knows they did.
It sounds like that, Howard. But with respect to that issue, this really sounds to me, with all due respect to Tom Mesereau, who's doing a great job overall, like he's getting a little far afield here.
Well, I don't agree. What it shows is that this kid will take money from any source, one. Two, he knew this lady or these people were Fox representatives. He couldn't have thought for a moment they were there as his friends. I don't think that's credible.
Oh, but come on, Sean, is that really a fair comment? This is a kid. Let's not forget, he is 15 years old. Heck, you come up to me, I'm a couple of years past 15, and you say, hey, let me buy you lunch, give me some money, I might just say, yeah, sure.
Well, you know, I'm still confused really about the timing of this. Is this supposed to have happened before or after the molestation? If it's after the molestation, it's more odd behavior. Here's this family, again, we remember how they were living, and now suddenly they're cavorting with the media. They're out cavorting with the media, going to the Turnberry Resort. I mean, this is not what you would expect from a family who...
It's also that this kid may be lying.
Well,
I mean,
of course.
and that's, you know, if Mesereau comes back with these receipts, or if Mesereau comes back with these witnesses, it's yet another lie.
Doesn't it?
But it minimizes, as the kid wants to minimize.
James.
Okay.
For sure, you know that these people didn't take him out before the Bashir documentary. So you know it was after that, at the very best for him, probably at or about the time the investigation was taking place. What Mesereau didn't ask, or maybe we just missed it, is, well, if you didn't pay for the movies, who did? Or did you pay for the movies?
Let's point taken. Perhaps he lied about getting this money. Perhaps he got this money and just wanted to be a kid who wanted some money or to be treated well by this news organization. But can we just pull back for just a moment? It's a 15-year-old kid who is now, it was 13 years, even more so, a fortiori, counsel, even more so, he's 13 years old. Somebody wants to take him to the movies. How is he supposed to distinguish between, I'm not supposed to go because it's going to make my case look bad or make the prosecution look bad?
Of course he can't distinguish, and of course he would go to the movies, and I don't have any problem with anybody paying for his movies. It's the question of whether or not they started to buy him stuff, and he lies about it. I think the question is the lie.
I don't know. Is the question the lie, or is the question, even if he lied, what did he lie about? At this point, Tom Mesereau goes on to point out that there was a cop there when the family supposedly needed one most.
Do you know someone named Andrew Lasik?
No.
Okay, now you mentioned...
Lasik? Police officer?
Yes, do you know him?
Yes.
How did you meet him?
He was an LAPD officer that... I forgot really how we met him. I think he was, I don't know, my mom met him or something, and then he visited us a lot.
Do you know approximately when you first met this LAPD officer, Mr. Lasik?
After my father left. A few months after my father left. After I finished chemotherapy.
And he was a friend of your family, correct?
Yes.
He used to visit your house, correct?
Yes.
You spoke to him, right?
Yes.
You saw your brother and sister speak to him, didn't you?
Yes.
And you saw your mother speak to him, right?
Yes.
Do you recall anyone ever complaining to Los Angeles police officer Andrew Lasik that anyone was being held against their will?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to the question as vague as to time frame.
I'll rephrase it, Your Honor.
All right.
During the period you claim you escaped from Neverland 3 times, do you recall anyone in your family ever complaining to LAPD officer Andrew Lasik that anyone was being mistreated or held against their will?
His name is Lasik, and I don't remember anything happening like that.
Ooh, a little testy, Sean, with respect to correcting correcting Mesereau. But let's go to this whole issue of what the subject matter is here. Enough already with the escape questioning.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't think it's ever enough.
Okay, wait, everybody make a note, stop the presses. I just got another concession. I think this is 2 in 3 weeks from Sean,
what I was going to say is I don't think it's ever enough with the escape thing, because the escape thing is so ridiculous. Mesereau's got to keep making that point. But it shows yet another opportunity this boy and this family had to tell someone what was going on. This is a great opportunity. It's not only a police officer, it's a trusted police officer, a friend. Here's an opportunity to tell someone the bad things that are happening, and he doesn't tell.
Let's talk about this word friend, Howard. We hear this repeated by this young man over and over again. So-and-so was my friend. Michael was my friend. People who we know as adults, there's not really a friendship there. They're acquaintances, they're people you know, they may treat you nicely, but there's no relationship there. Essentially, he just met these folks. How's that going to play?
Well, it's what makes this case frustrating. There's no doubt the kid was sick. There's no doubt he had a horrific family situation. He's looking for friends every place, whether it's Michael or police officers. So, to me, that's the frustrating part of the case.
But doesn't that
this
make
is
him a prime
situation.
victim?
Well,
he's so wanting.
I don't know if it makes him a prime victim. My concern is he's clearly lied in some parts. And again, it gets back to mixing fact and fiction. It's very hard when this case rests on what he says versus what Michael Jackson's position is.
Yeah, that's true. I think I almost got a concession out of Howard Weitzman, but I'll work on him some more as we go along. When we return, what did the accuser tell the actor, Chris Tucker? Stay with us.
The reenactments and commentary in this program may contain frank talk of a sexual nature. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome back. Defense attorney Tom Mesereau sets more credibility traps for this young accuser. Here's what the jury heard according to the courtroom transcripts.
Isn't it true that you and your brother would sometimes roam around the main house starting at 7 a.m. in the morning?
The cooks, the chefs would be in there like 6:30 or 7 or something, and then we'd go in there to eat breakfast.
Okay, and how often do you remember doing that?
Every morning when we would eat breakfast.
Do you know someone named Shane Meredith?
No.
Never knew an employee named Shane Meredith at Neverland?
If I did, I don't remember that.
He caught you with an open bottle of alcohol at Neverland, didn't he? When Michael Jackson wasn't even around.
No.
That's going to be big. Now, the Hollywood factor escalates, and we get to Chris Tucker, the actor, and his private plane. A programming note, we want you to know that the actor who was cast to play the accuser does not bear any resemblance to the actual young man.
Do you remember ever telling Chris Tucker that you didn't make any money from the fundraiser?
No. Well, what fundraising?
Fundraiser for you at the Laugh Factory.
No, because we did make money at the Laugh Factory.
Yes. So you never told Chris Tucker we didn't make any money from the fundraiser?
Why would I say that when we did? No, I never said that.
Okay. Do you recall yourself asking Chris Tucker for money?
No.
Do you remember telling Chris Tucker that your family was being hounded by the media and could not leave your house?
No.
Never said that?
I might have told them about some media people that were around our house, but I mean...
Do you remember telling Chris Tucker the media was hounding your family and there was no place for you people to go?
No, because...
Never said that?
I might have talked to him about some guy that was holding a camera outside of my house, but I mean...
Do you remember telling Chris Tucker that your family had nowhere to go?
No.
Do you remember telling Chris Tucker that you knew Michael Jackson was in Miami and you wanted to go see him?
No. Well, the first time I flew in his plane over to Miami, so I don't know if you're trying to talk about that or what.
Well, before you flew on Chris Tucker's plane to Miami, do you remember telling Chris Tucker that you wanted to go to Florida to see Michael Jackson?
No.
Never said that?
Michael called, and they arranged it so that we can go on Chris's plane.
But you never told Chris you wanted to go see Michael in Florida, right?
I don't remember if I said in those exact words.
Well, whatever he said, Howard, in whatever the words he used was, the idea here is that this kid is getting rides in a plane. Is it an issue of greed on the part of this kid? Remember, he's 13 years old. Or is this simply a young man who's just out of his element? He's getting all this stuff thrown at him. Michael Jackson, Neverland Ranch, Chris Tucker, private plane rides.
Out of his element, very sympathetic young man. Terrible, condition with having cancer, bad family situation. But the issue really becomes the jurors have to determine, is he lying? Is he telling the truth? And if he's lying in part in some areas, is he lying in other areas? Did he make up the sexual offenses against
Sure, and
Michael
that's going to be the big deal.
And some of this stuff, is not, is not that critical. Except for Chris Tucker's going to come in and say, yes, he did say that.
And that's my point, too. Thanks for bringing that up. Thanks for bringing that up, Sean, because is it going to be an issue of these lies, if the defense is able to prove that to the jury's satisfaction, that he is indeed lying, and there's some strong evidence that he is in certain parts, so minuscule, so non-important with respect to the main issue that it's going to make Mesereau look like he's just beating up on this kid?
I don't think so. There are so many lies or inconsistencies for the jury to look at and decide on. And if witness after witness, Shane Meredith comes in, Chris Tucker comes in and says the opposite of what this boy says, as we've said before, if you lie in small things, do you lie in big things?
And that, Ricky, is the jury instruction.
But it's a problem, I think, because one of the things that jurors get very angry about is if they think you pick at someone about inconsistencies that are not important. There may be inconsistencies in this boy's testimony that are highly relevant, really important, and that'll make a difference. But if you parade in 10 or 20 witnesses about little things, I wanted to see Michael versus Michael invited me, then the jury gets upset.
The jury may get upset, but we're going to see it later on in this testimony today. And it was big yesterday about that story about masturbation and leading to raping a woman. That's going to be one of the big ones, folks, I think. After questions about the actor Chris Tucker, the defense shifts to another actor, a cast member from the television show The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Okay, do you know Vernee Watson?
I kind of remember her name, but...
She was an acting teacher for you, wasn't she?
Was she on a show with Will Smith, the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air show?
Excuse me, I couldn't understand what you said.
I think I remember who she is, but I don't remember.
Did she teach you acting at a school owned by Belinda Johnson?
I went to some... I mean, I don't know if we're talking about the same Renee Watson.
Just asking you if you know someone named Vernee Watson.
I kind of remember her name, but I mean, I haven't...
Do you know who she is?
As I said, I kind of think I do, but I don't know if it's that person, if that name goes with that face.
Well, can you please describe the Vernee Watson that you know?
She has, like, dreadlocks, and she's African-American, and she played Will Smith's mother on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and yeah.
And how do you know her?
I don't remember. She's been our friend for a long time.
Is she still your friend?
We haven't called her in a while, but I think I met her through a dance company, a dance class, a dance studio I was with.
Do you recall ever asking her for money?
No.
Do you recall your mother ever asking Vernee Watson for money?
No.
And once again, folks, the question is to escape or not to escape.
So you went into town with Michael Jackson, correct?
Yeah. Michael took us to Toys R Us.
You picked up some fans, correct, on the way?
Yeah, Michael invited some people into the thing.
You never complained to anyone in the store or any of these fans that anyone was being held against their will, correct?
I was actually happy to be at Neverland all the time.
And you were happy to go.
That's something you don't really understand, is that the majority of those times was the first few escapes that you talk about. I liked being at Neverland. That was like Disneyland. I loved being there. I had lots of fun. I mean, my mom was the one always worried. It wasn't until the last time that I realized I don't want to be here.
Your mother was worried, but she always came back, right? Right?
I guess so.
Ricky Kleeman, a masterful job with respect to Tom Mesereau now having the witness, and in this case, the key witness, adopt the language that Mesereau was using after the first couple of escapes.
Well, see, that's why it was good. He kept saying it.
He kept saying it, and now he's got him saying it.
There's a whole story about if you can get the language of your side of the story, your theory of the case, to be adopted by the witness, then you have succeeded in getting to the jury. And Sean is absolutely right. This is important because this charge of all the charges is the charge that shouldn't have been brought. This is a case about sexual molestation. It's not a case about false imprisonment. And Mesereau has a great point to argue ultimately. It's that they sued before and used false imprisonment before, and they're using it again.
And how's that going to work here? We've had some pretty strong rulings, legal decisions by this judge that really limit how that J.C. Penney case, that's the case we're referring to right now, the other case brought by this mother, the mother of this accuser, he may not even get to the heart of that.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if the judge allows Mesereau, if the mother takes the stand, to cross-examine her on that. But, you know, Ricky's made a really wonderful point, and the point is that Mesereau has not only gotten him to adopt some of his phrases, but it makes it look like the false imprisonment charge is really almost bogus.
Yes.
And the issue becomes the sexual molestation case, and Sneddon should have, as Ricky said, from day one, concentrated on that charge.
And we're going to talk about, when we return, what the defense might argue as to why that charge is even included in this case. And the magic, folks, is not only when the witness starts saying the same words that the defense attorney does, but when the jury comes out and talks about that in terms of the defense theory. When we return, who vandalized this now infamous mannequin? Stay with us.
The reenactments and commentary in this program may contain frank talk of a sexual nature. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome back. The Michael Jackson trial takes and has taken many strange twists and some rather bizarre turns, including a lot of testimony about a mannequin. Here's what the jury heard according to the courtroom transcripts.
Mr. I'm showing you a document that's labeled Exhibit 5032. Do you see that?
Yes.
And that appears to be a photograph of a mannequin, correct?
Yes.
Appears to be an African-American girl with braids, right?
Yes.
With a blue jean jacket, right?
Yes.
And a pink shirt. Do you see that?
Yes.
Have you seen that mannequin before?
Yes, I saw it in Michael's bedroom.
Is that the mannequin that you're claiming Mr. Jackson simulated a sex act with?
Yes.
Okay, now, did you ever discuss with Mr. Jackson where that mannequin came from?
No, he said that there was a bunch of mannequins all over his bedroom.
Well, did he ever tell you that this was something that was custom made and it's a mannequin of a cousin of his?
No, he just said that he has a lot of mannequins.
So you never discussed with him what this mannequin was all about, right?
No.
At some point, you learned that somebody had defaced that mannequin, right?
Defaced? What do you mean?
Yes, somebody had taken like a magic marker and messed up that mannequin, right?
No, I don't remember that.
And do you see where somebody went into the vaginal portion of that mannequin and defaced it with a magic marker?
Yes, I see that, I guess.
You know who did that, don't you?
No.
May I publish this, Your Honor?
No.
You don't know who did that at all?
No.
You didn't do it?
No.
Your brother didn't do it?
No.
And next, did this accuser mock Michael Jackson?
Finally, Mr. In your direct examination, you commented a couple of times on Mr. Jackson wearing makeup. Do you remember that?
Here?
When you were answering Prosecutor Sneddon's questions, a couple of times you used the word makeup in referring to Michael Jackson, right?
I said one time when he was... a story about a time when we were in the room where his makeup was, but I don't remember me saying it a lot of times.
Now, you knew that Michael Jackson has a skin disease called vitiligo, right?
He told me about it.
And he told you that he's an African-American man with a skin disease that eats up pigment in his skin, correct?
Yes.
And you knew that that disease was causing certain patches of white and brown on his skin, right?
Yes, I guess.
And?
I don't know. It's not like I was making fun of him yesterday, if that's what you're trying to imply.
Well, you knew that his skin is vulnerable to sunlight, correct?
Yes.
And that's why you see him with an umbrella, correct?
Yes.
And you also knew, because of the patches that appear on his skin from that disease, he does sometimes put some makeup on, right?
I didn't know about patches. I thought he was just all white.
Well, you discussed the skin disease with him, right?
Yes.
You knew the skin disease was changing the color of his skin, right?
That's what he told me.
And you knew that's why he put makeup on. True?
Not really. I thought it was just because he had, like... because he didn't have pink on his lips. So he would put makeup on his lips. I mean, I wasn't making fun of him yesterday, if that's what you're trying to say.
You weren't making fun of him at all?
No.
Howard Weitzman, give us an explanation, as previously having represented Michael Jackson on an unrelated matter, not related to this case, this whole issue of Michael Jackson's skin condition. What is that?
Well, vitiligo is basically two-tone skin, light and dark, and Michael does put makeup on his hands and his face to keep the skin one color. My confusion is this proper cross-examination for the young man as to credibility? And it's probably not, but it is a way for Tom Mesereau to educate the jury.
Explain what you mean, because I was wondering about that, but go ahead and flesh that out for us.
Well, I'm not sure it really goes to his credibility, but it does go to explain why Michael wears makeup, and the young man raised it in response to some questions Mr. Sneddon asked. So it's a good opportunity for Tom Mesereau to educate the jurors.
Yeah, my first thought, go ahead.
Early, too, because, you know, he could call in a doctor and have the doctor explain what vitiligo is. But isn't it much better to get it out there? Because it's one of those weird things about Michael Jackson that we all know and the jurors know. So why not get rid of it with the most adverse witness? I mean, it's really a great idea.
I think that that's got to be the issue. Now, Sean, one thing that struck me here was the idea of this is bringing out sympathy for Michael Jackson. This is bringing out an issue that now the jurors are going to identify perhaps and understand a little bit more, as Howard brought out.
Yeah, and even though Mesereau said in his opening that Michael Jackson was going to take the stand, we really don't know yet if he's going to or not. And this was a great opportunity, without calling Michael Jackson to the stand, to get all of this information out that is ultimately helpful to Mr. Jackson, I think.
I think it's going to be helpful, but the issue here is, well, let's take another track. Sneddon is letting this in. He's being silent. He's standing there, sitting there, not pushing that objection button.
Yeah, but it doesn't really matter if he's going to object to it or not, because this is a question where he talked about Michael Jackson and his makeup, and it did look to some people as if he were making fun of Michael Jackson, and it was like a dig at Michael Jackson, so it gave Mesereau an inroad. If he had never mentioned makeup.
Hold on, Howard. Let me go ahead and get to this next piece of tape, but that's going to be a big issue as we continue. And as Mesereau continues, he wonders if the accuser spells justice M-O-N-E-Y.
Okay, now you're aware, are you not, that you have until the age of 18 to file a lawsuit against Mr. Jackson if you choose to, correct?
No.
You've never discussed that with your mother?
No.
Never discussed that with Larry Feldman, the attorney?
No.
And never discussed it with Bill Dickerman, the attorney?
No.
Okay, you're also aware that if Mr. Jackson is convicted, you could automatically win that civil suit, right?
No.
No one's ever discussed that with you?
No. We said things like, oh, we don't want his money and stuff like that.
Never discussed that issue with any attorney, right?
No.
First time you've heard about it.
About that I can... You just told me now that I can sue him till I'm 18 or something like that. I didn't even know about that stuff.
Didn't even know about that, right? And never heard your mother mention it?
No.
Well, next, the prosecutor, Tom Sneddon, gets to try to rehabilitate this witness. On his redirect of the accuser, D.A. Sneddon tries to repair some of the defense damage.
You're in the high school?
Yes.
What grade are you?
I'm in 9th grade.
And yesterday you were asked, I think you made the statement rather candidly. You were asked by Mr. Mesereau, were you a discipline problem? And you said yes when you were at John Burroughs.
Yes.
Okay. Currently in the high school that you're in, do you get good grades?
Yes.
Did you make the honor roll?
Yes.
Do you get in fights anymore?
No.
Objection, relevance.
Overruled. The answer was no. Next question.
Have you had any discipline problems?
No.
Are you involved in after-school activities?
Objection, relevance.
Sustained.
During the time that you were, let's go back just a second. In the year, I believe you testified 2001, at some point your father left. Is that correct?
Right after I was done with cancer. I didn't see him anymore.
What was the impact on you when your dad left?
I cried every night.
Why?
Because, I mean, I didn't have a dad anymore. I mean, I was kind of happy that he left because he hit my mom a lot, but I didn't. I just felt like I didn't have anybody, any father. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And you don't feel that way anymore?
No.
Points for the prosecution, Sean.
Yes.
The idea here, a rather good redirect, pointed at what this kid had to go through being the victim, the current victim, de jure, if you will, of Michael Jackson, according to all the press reports.
I agree. I think that Mr. Sneddon did a very good job. I think Gavin did a good job. I think he explained himself well, and I was impressed with this testimony.
Okay, now tell us what you really think, because obviously you still think the defense is ahead at this point.
I do think the defense is ahead, and I think that we may see that the timing of the fights doesn't necessarily jibe with what he's saying. I don't know. Let's wait and see. I don't want to come down too hard on the boy, but perhaps the fighting occurred before what he...
Sure, and it goes back, no, but your point is really well taken,
Okay,
Howard.
good.
That is,
I'm glad
what
I was
you're
able
talking
to.
about here is the point that I made a couple of days ago, that you all poo-pooed. You've got a kid who's going through some horrific stuff.
Exactly.
The cancer, the alleged victimization, he's acting. You didn't, because you like
And
me.
I just said that earlier today.
Well, but the other day when I brought it up, he said, oh, yeah, but what the heck, he's just being a bad
You know
kid.
what? In my mind, the following picture came up based on the last two parts of the trial we saw. It's like a ping pong ball.
Sure.
Mesereau hits him, Sneddon hits him.
that's
You know, we missed a major point. He went to two lawyers, sat in the lawyer's office.
Yes.
Did he think for a moment he was there so he could complain about Michael Jackson? That should have been to a police officer. So it's very clear, I would think, that they were there about the money.
Were they there about the money? We're going to pick up on that point on the other side of this. Or do folks really not know what to do when they find themselves in these types of situations? Still ahead, the prosecution's version of what the accusers said about Jackson's innocence and why. Stay with us.
The reenactments and commentary in this program may contain frank talk of a sexual nature. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome back. As Redirect continues, DA Tom Sneddon tries to repair what may be the most damaging blow to the prosecution's case so far. Here's what the jury heard according to the courtroom transcripts.
So let's talk a little bit about some of the things Mr. Mesereau talked about yesterday, Mr. Girault. He talked about an incident where you had a run-in with Mr. Girault that ended up you going to see Mr. Alpert. Do you recall that?
I don't know if I saw Mr. Alpert, but I remember seeing someone that was in the office.
Did you ever receive any discipline as a result of that incident with Mr. Girault?
No, I don't think. No, they never even did anything.
Now, when you went back to school after you left Neverland Ranch, okay?
Yes.
March and April, you were at John Burroughs, correct?
Yes.
What was it like when you went back to school?
All the kids would laugh at me and try to push me around and stuff and say, "That's the kid that got raped by Michael Jackson," and stuff like that.
What was your reaction to that?
I would sometimes not say anything and just walk away. And if they got close enough, sometimes I would fight them after they hit me first, because I didn't like to throw the first punch, because I believe that,
Objection, non-responsive.
I'll sustain the objection in the middle after they hit me first, where it stops.
Thank you, Your Honor. So there were fights that you got into after you left Neverland Valley Ranch because of the things that the kids were saying to you?
Yes.
And when you got in a fight, what happens? Where do you have to go?
They took us to Dean Alpert.
Now, you were asked yesterday whether you had a conversation with Dean Alpert where he asked you whether or not Mr. Jackson had touched you. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And you recall that you probably told him it didn't happen, correct?
I told him that it didn't happen.
Okay. You told him it didn't happen?
Yes.
Okay. Why did you tell him that?
Because all the kids were already making fun of me in school, and I didn't want anybody to think that it really happened.
All right. Next, the accuser's final words on the witness stand.
Yesterday, in response to Mr. Mesereau's questions, you told him that Mr. Jackson was like a father figure to you. Is that correct?
Michael Jackson?
Yeah.
Yes.
And that you thought he was one of the coolest guys in the world, correct?
Yes.
And that you admired him.
Well, I only admire God, but he was a pretty cool guy.
How do you feel about Mr. Jackson now, in light of what he did to you?
Objection, 352, relevance, leading.
Overruled.
I don't really like him anymore. I don't think he's really that deserving of the respect that I was giving him, and as the coolest guy in the world.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Ricky, this is really interesting. The idea that first we get the invocation of God now. I don't admire him, I only admire God. That's a little too much. I was actually leaning toward this witness's testimony. He was making some points, and then he said something like this.
Well, I agree with you. I think the redirect, by the way, is really wonderful. I think Tom Sneddon did a great job at rehabilitating this witness. But I also think that this is gilding the lily. Not only the thing about God, but the whole thing about how do you feel now.
Yeah.
That's not relevant. It's not relevant how he feels now in terms of prosecuting a case about something that happened in 2003.
Now, I know, Howard, you want to talk about the train being on the tracks, and that's why he let that question in, but I'm not going to let you do that because I want you to deal with this issue about the fighting. A good point, as Ricky pointed out with respect to the redirect examination, the reason why the kid's fighting is because he's getting made fun of. That is very plausible, isn't it?
Not only plausible, it has the complete ring of credibility and truthfulness and makes perfect sense. And I think gives the jury some insight into the fact that there are some truths for sure.
So then
in
does
his
that now
testimony.
get this witness, Sean, the bonus, if you will, that we're not talking about simply a kid who had discipline problems and therefore he's a knucklehead kid, but this is a kid who genuinely may have been victimized and is doing what kids who are victimized do. They act up.
Perhaps I agree that this does have the ring of truth to it, and the point that I was trying to inartfully make before is borne out here. Perhaps we'll see some testimony or evidence that he was disruptive in getting into fights before this molestation occurred. If not, this does provide a reasonable explanation as to why he's fighting, why he's disruptive, why he's challenging teachers, and I suppose we'll hear experts who say that this is something that a kid might do who was molested.
Absolutely.
We're going to have to wait and see
now
how
we're back to
that
the expert
plays
testimony,
out.
which is sorely needed, I think, at this point, Howard, because there have been so many holes and so much headway made by the defense with this kid.
Well, something else. Yes, that's true. But I want to go back to something Ricky said.
Sure.
The question Sneddon asked, how do you feel about Michael Jackson now? I would have let that answer come in without objecting.
Why?
Because I think you would have seen more hostility. The objection calmed everything down.
Oh, how interesting.
I think it all
Very
would have
good,
spilled
Howard.
out.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's a question I would have just let alone.
And that's something with respect to technique that many attorneys do when they get, especially the victim on the stand, and they think that they're lying. Just let them talk, let them talk, let them
Absolutely.
talk. As Grandma used to say, give them enough rope so they hang themselves. After the prosecution questioned several law enforcement officers concerning procedural issues primarily, Sergeant Steve Robel of the Santa Barbara Sheriff's Department took the stand to testify about a search at Neverland. Then, defense attorney Robert Sanger dealt with evidence seized at Jackson's home. And he did so while mentioning two presidents and masturbation in the same cross-examination.
Thank you. Okay. Now, none of these items, and by items, I'm referring 284, 283, and 84. None of these items are, per se, illegal to possess, are they? I'll just put them up quickly. They're not contraband?
No, those are not illegal to possess, correct.
So when they say teenaged, these are magazines that show models or people who are 18 or over. However young they may look, they're 18 or over as far as you can tell, correct?
They're supposed to be, yes.
And those are commercially available. You can go to a store and buy them, correct?
As far as I know, yes.
Now, when you were going through Mr. Jackson's home, did you see a number of items from notable people that were just lying around or hanging on the wall or sitting on a... I'll give you some examples if you want. Did you see, for instance, a letter from Steven Spielberg that was just sitting on a table?
I did not see that, no.
All right. Did you see a letter from President Bush?
I believe I saw that, yes.
Did you see some correspondence from Ronald Reagan?
Yes.
Did you see other correspondence from other notable celebrities and politicians and other people?
I don't recall exactly who they were, but he had a lot of various things framed from those particular people, yes.
And some things that weren't framed, right?
The items that I found that I saw?
That you saw.
They were framed.
All right. Now, let's talk about something a little more substantive here. On July 7th, 2003, Gavin said that he was masturbated by Michael Jackson 5 times or so, did he not?
Yes, he did.
And then on 8/13/03, he said that he was masturbated 5 times and he ejaculated all 5 times, right?
That's correct.
Now, we'll hold on to that and let's go to another issue. As far as the timing of the incidents was concerned, you already answered some questions on direct on this. I keep doing that. On July 7th, 2003, Gavin said that the masturbation incidents occurred on one of the last days that I was staying at Neverland, correct?
I recall it as being towards his last days of staying at Neverland.
Okay.
So it was towards before he left for good. Yes, that's the way I understand it.
Ricky Kleeman, with respect to this ejaculation 5 times, another expert testimony about male physiology at this age, perhaps?
No, I don't think it's about that. It's a question of, is Gavin telling the truth? Is his brother telling the truth? We have very different versions of what this molestation was from both Gavin and the brother. And so what we're going to hear from these cops is, well, a few months after this, in 2003, what did he say then? And is any of it true?
Well, I don't know. Piggybacking on your point, this doesn't seem possible. 5 times.
You know,
I don't know. I know he's a young kid, but it rings back to what Mesro said yesterday. The story just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So was it 1 time, now 2 times, then it's 5 times?
The issue
that
is
seems
really,
somewhat unbelievable.
The issue is
to
really
me.
simple. credibility again. The jury gets to hear he told this story, that story, and this story. The one thing I don't understand.
Hold that one thing. We're going to get to that in just a moment because I really want to hear what you don't understand. When we return, did the accuser do the right thing for the wrong reason or the wrong thing for the right reason? Stay with us.
The reenactments and commentary in this program may contain frank talk of a sexual nature. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome back. Defense attorney Robert Sanger accuses lead investigator Sergeant Steve Robel of the Santa Barbara Sheriff's Department of a rush to judgment. Here's what the jury heard according to the courtroom transcripts.
All right. So you said to Davelin towards the end of her interview, okay, one thing I wanted to say and emphasize to you is that you guys are doing the right thing here. You know what? I know it's scary, and I really realize that you guys are going through a lot, and you've been through a lot as a family. They're the ones that have done wrong, not you. And trust me in this, and trust Detective Zealous, we're law enforcement. We're going to try our best to make this case work. I can't guarantee it, where it's going to go from here, but that's why we're interviewing everybody involved. I don't care how much money they have. Do you want me to keep going? Who he is, what, but he's done wrong. You guys are the victims. Your family is. He is wrong in what he's done. We're going to try our best. Can't guarantee it. We're going to try our best to bring him to justice. Did you say that?
I definitely said that.
Okay. So that's not the statement of somebody who has an open mind, who's looking to see whether or not these people are telling the truth, is it?
That statement, Mr. Sanger, is what, through my courses that I've had, and you have victims that are terrified in coming forward to law enforcement, that is to reassure them that they are not the suspects, or they're the victims in this case. And I was reassuring them through that and letting them know that they were doing the right thing because they were terrified when they came forward. It took us about 2 weeks to get them to come forward and up here to be interviewed.
Now, Ricky, with respect to the substance of this testimony, I want to deal with that in a little bit later, but we haven't seen very much of this particular defense attorney.
This is Robert Sanger. He's co-counsel with Tom Mesereau, and all of us have tried cases with co-counsel during the years. And one of the things that happens is you have to be careful with the jury. Because Tom Mesereau is the big guy. He's the lead guy. So does the first moment of this attorney signal to the jurors that maybe this testimony isn't quite as important as the other? So what you need is for Mr. Sanger to do a lot of witnesses, and I guarantee you that he will.
Now let's get to the substance, Howard. This attorney, Robert Sanger, who appears to be doing a fine job, and he's actually done a lot of work outside of the view of the jury with respect to motions. Heard a lot from him last Friday when the jury wasn't present. This, although it may play well with the jury, isn't really a fair comment. When you're talking to people who you think are victims, you have reason to believe are victims, trying to reassure them is exactly what he should be doing.
Well, first of all, I know Bob Sanger. He's tried a lot of cases. However, he didn't have control of this witness, in my opinion, and this is a witness you need to control. He let this witness go off.
How so? Give us an example of what you're talking about.
Well, when he asked him about what he said and why he said it, first of all, I would have let it alone. Yeah. I see no reason to even ask that question. But more importantly, he started off talking about presidents, and then he segued into the masturbation and the multiple stories, and then he went into here. For me, if I'm examining this, this officer, I go directly to the different stories.
And you keep him contained and
totally
indeed
controlled.
Sean Chapman-Holly, this guy is channeling you with respect to this rush to judgment issue and making that implication here, isn't he?
Yes, he's trying to get forward the point.
Stop trying to influence the defense attorneys in this case.
He's trying to say that the police and the prosecution together had a rush to judgment. They had made up their mind about this from the start, and that it's not really Detective Zealous, it's Detective Zealot.
Yeah, well,
Very good.
That's very, very, very good, Sean.
I just got to say, as a wife of a police chief, though, this is good police work. You need to reassure these children that they have a safe haven so they could tell you what happened.
Indeed. All right, we're going to leave it right here for today, folks. Pick it up tomorrow. Be sure to watch us tomorrow, 9 p.m., for another 1-hour extended edition of our exclusive Michael Jackson coverage, only on 8.